The Royal Canadian Mint just did something that no one saw coming. This morning, without warning, their website went dark. Silver maple leafs, 100-ounce bars, commemorative sets, gone. It wasn't that they were out of stock, not that they were temporarily unavailable. It was as if the entire section disappeared from the site, like it never existed. What makes this so shocking? Just 48 hours earlier, the US Mint did the exact same thing. Both mints gone silent. Now, why does this matter to you? Because when two sovereign mints, responsible for minting the world's most trusted silver, suddenly stop selling within 48 hours, that's not just a glitch. It's a sign that something much bigger is unfolding, and it could shake up markets in ways you don't expect. Stick with me. What happens next? That's where things get really interesting. So let's break down what's really happening. On January 14th, the US Mint went dark. No silver eagles, no gold coins. It wasn't a glitch. It was deliberate. They pulled the plug. 2 days later, the Royal Canadian Mint did the exact same thing. Now, this is not just a coincidence. The US Mint suspends sales and then Canada follows. This is more than just an isolated decision. It's part of a larger, unfolding pattern, and it raises an uncomfortable question. Are we witnessing the beginning of something much bigger? Think about it. These mints represent the largest, most trusted sources for silver. And now, when the lights go out at both, what are we supposed to think? Retail buyers, investors, and even industrial buyers are scrambling to secure their supply. But what happens when there's simply no more to sell? Now, here's where it gets even more disturbing. The official reason given by the Royal Canadian Mint: unprecedented demand and global supply constraints. Sounds reasonable, right? But let's think about that for a second. The Mint is saying they can't get enough silver. But if that were true, why didn't they prepare for this? Look at the numbers. In 2025, the Royal Canadian Mint produced 30 million silver maple leafs, but just 16 days into January 2026, orders came in for 8.2 million coins. That's already more than a quarter of their entire annual production in just 16 days. What does that tell you? Demand is spiking way beyond what anyone expected. But there's a bigger issue. The Mint can't even meet current demand. Why? Because they can't get the silver, and that's when the panic truly starts. Dealers are now reporting premiums, sometimes $40 to $50 over the spot price. The reality of the physical market is already disconnected from the paper price. And this gap, it's only going to get wider. But here's where things start to really escalate. The Royal Canadian Mint isn't the only one caught off guard. This isn't just a Canadian problem. This is a global issue. As soon as the US Mint suspended sales, the ripple effect hit the Canadian Mint hard. Buyers who were once loyal to the US Mint started flocking to the Royal Canadian Mint. They thought, if the US Mint is out, Canada's still a safe bet. But even Canada couldn't handle the surge. So what happens next? It's not just retail buyers anymore. Industrial demand is soaring. The automotive industry, solar power companies, electronics manufacturers, they're all competing for the same dwindling supply. And when those industries can't get what they need, they'll pay whatever it takes. That's when things start to get ugly fast. If the physical market continues to decouple from the paper market, we're heading straight for a crisis, one that could send silver prices to levels no one predicted. Now let's zoom out and look at the bigger picture. This isn't just about silver. This is about trust. The entire system of sovereign mints, bullion dealers, and the precious metals market is built on one thing: confidence. When that confidence starts to crack, everything falls apart. We've seen it before. Trust in the paper market is fragile, and once the physical market starts decoupling from the paper price, the system that's been holding this together for decades begins to unravel. Why? Because the demand for physical silver doesn't play by the same rules as the paper market. In fact, the paper price can go down, but the physical price will keep climbing. So when the mints stop selling, it's not just a logistical issue, it's a signal that the game is changing. And that shift, it's already happening. Right now, there's no clear end in sight. The structural issues in the market, slow refining, overwhelmed supply chains, and skyrocketing premiums are just the beginning. Here's where it gets unsettling. With the US Mint and Royal Canadian Mint suspending sales and premiums going through the roof, many of you might be wondering, what happens if the physical market completely breaks away from the paper market? It's simple. The spot price becomes irrelevant. At that point, silver isn't just a commodity, it becomes a game of who can get it first. The mints may hold some of the last available stock, but if they've stopped selling, who's left? Private dealers, and when dealers are out of stock, that's when the premiums surge. Some dealers are already charging $40 to $50 over spot for silver rounds. Imagine what happens when that's the norm. People will be forced to pay $140 or more per ounce just to get their hands on silver. But the real question is, what if the gap between the paper price and physical price keeps widening? What happens when people realize they've missed their window? But here's the part nobody's saying out loud. This isn't just a silver problem. This is a problem for the entire global economy. When the precious metals market goes off the rails like this, it doesn't just affect investors. It affects industries, governments, and entire markets. Think about the strategic reserves that countries depend on. When silver becomes nearly impossible to obtain, industries that rely on it, solar panels, electronics, medical devices, will be forced to scramble. And when those industries start bidding up prices, that's when things get truly out of control. It's not just about silver coins anymore. It's about industrial demand for a precious metal that has no substitute. When that demand skyrockets, it will force prices to rise to levels we haven't seen before. And if that happens, the consequences will ripple across the entire economy, affecting everything from manufacturing to global supply chains. This isn't just a shortage. This is a collapse waiting to happen. Let's take a step back and look at what's really going on behind the scenes. The U.S. Mint and the Royal Canadian Mint don't just operate on their own. They are part of a larger global network. And right now, that network is under extreme stress. China, which controls around 40% of the world's silver refining capacity, has already made a strategic move. On January 1st, 2026, China introduced export restrictions on refined silver. This isn't a temporary glitch. This is a policy decision that's part of a larger geopolitical play. Why? Because China knows exactly what's coming. They see the growing deficit in the silver market. They see sovereign mints struggling to secure supply. And they know they're sitting on a mountain of silver. So instead of letting that silver flow to the West to prop up the markets, they're keeping it for themselves. This is not just about silver, it's about power. And the West? We're caught in the middle, scrambling to find whatever silver we can before it's gone for good. So what happens if this continues? What if the panic spreads? We've already seen 2 major mints suspend sales. But what about the others? The Perth Mint in Australia, the Austrian Mint, the Mexican Mint. As each mint pulls back, the demand for silver doesn't disappear. It just shifts. Buyers will keep looking for other options, and every new shutoff sends more people into a frenzy. This isn't just a shortage, it's a contagion. The real danger here is that it doesn't take much for this to spiral. Let's say the Perth Mint suspends sales. That's 3 mints in 1 week. If that happens, it's no longer just a supply disruption. It's a global sovereign mint crisis. That's when the prices will go vertical. When every dealer starts seeing demand far outweighing their supply, they'll jack up premiums. And when that happens, the spot price on your screen becomes irrelevant. What you'll actually pay for silver won't even remotely resemble the paper price. Now, here's the kicker. If you think this is just a temporary disruption, think again. This isn't a typical supply chain glitch. It's not like the silver market will simply bounce back. We're dealing with a structural problem, one that's been brewing for years. Global silver supply has been in a deficit for months, but now it's no longer about just numbers on a chart. It's about the physical metal running out. When the U.S. Mint and the Royal Canadian Mint shut down their sales, they didn't just stop selling coins, they pulled the anchor out from under the entire market. Silver is no longer just a commodity. It's becoming a scarce, highly sought-after asset. And here's the real problem. The mints can't replenish their stocks quickly enough. Refiners are overwhelmed, orders are backed up, and those who are still getting silver, they're paying a steep price. So where does that leave us? If both mints are out of stock and private dealers can't secure inventory, that means one thing. The window to buy at reasonable prices is closing fast. The longer you wait, the higher the premiums go, and the harder it becomes to secure physical silver.